All right, you ready?
Yeah, I'm
All
ready.
right, man. All right, here we go. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. I'm super excited to have as my guest today, Michael Remole. Michael, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, man. So Michael has nearly 2 decades of experience working with children and families in a variety of settings, including as a multi-systemic therapist, a clinical director, a children's pastor, camp counselor, and a speaker. After serving as a children's pastor, he went on to obtain his Master of Arts in Clinical Counseling from Ashland Theological Seminary. Following seminary, Michael worked at the Buckeye Ranch in Columbus, Ohio as a multi-systemic therapist, working with individuals between the ages of 12 and 18 and their families. Michael founded and now leads Gateway Family Services of Illinois, providing trauma-focused equine-assisted psychotherapy, individual and family therapy. This team is working with individuals and families across the lifespan who've experienced trauma. He spent several years working with youth in the foster care system and post-adoption. Gateway Family Services is also working with the VA Illiana healthcare system to provide services to veterans. And in addition to Gateway Family Services, Michael is currently the executive director of Hooves of Hope, a faith-based mentoring program. Dude, you are busy.
Yes. Yep. We don't have time to sleep around here.
All right, man. Welcome. It's great to talk to you. Before we get going here, Michael, share with our listeners where you're from originally and where you are currently.
Yes, I actually am from Potomac, Illinois, and I went away and got my clinical experience and then came back to my hometown of Potomac, and that's where I'm at right now.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. All right. So we first got in touch. Well, you have a big conference coming up, and we'll definitely talk about that. June 16th through 18th, hybrid trauma conference featuring Bruce Perry, Stuart Ablon, Brian Samuels, and Gina Samuels. So a pretty awesome lineup. Anyway, we'll talk about that. But I saw that and I was like, all right, I'm just drawn to people who are doing awesome things in the field, and I thought it would be great to have you on here. But let's start from the beginning, or the kind of beginning. How the heck did you get into this field?
So, I've been a horse person my entire life, and have always thought that there is something quite powerful about the connection with horses. And was a children's pastor, was working with kids and families, and they were coming to me with lots of struggles and stuff that was beyond my experience. Mm-hmm. So I got my master's in counseling. And
well, for instance, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what were they coming to you? That was
some severe trauma that, okay. And I didn't know at that point exactly, what that meant and why they were responding to certain things and why certain, cognitive interventions weren't working and weren't successful. And so I was kind of clueless. I didn't know what to do. And so I sought out my master's in counseling, and that's how I kind of ended up in Columbus. And when I was in Columbus, I started to work with kids and realized that I was still missing the mark. Like, we're doing a lot of behavior modification, but a lot of these kids came from very serious, they had a lot of early developmental trauma and just a lot of tough things that I was kind of missing. And so I left Columbus, Ohio, and moved back to Illinois and started working on starting the clinical practice here with the horses. And my horse background comes into play here because a horse's brain is wired for survival. So you think about it, their brainstem, their fight, flight, or freeze is beefed up. It's really strong. And they have a limbic system and neocortex. Their brain structure is similar to ours, but they are essentially similar to somebody who's experienced trauma. And so as I learned more about that, then I was pointed towards Dr. Perry's work, and really began to realize just what all this, how we're going to work to address trauma and help kids and families heal from the trauma they've experienced. And at the same time, we're able to help our horses heal and from the trauma they've experienced, and to be able to access the different parts of the brain. So we've got a horse and human, they're helping each other. And it's just a beautiful connection and relationship. And, like Dr. Perry says, relationships are the vehicle for change. And to me, sometimes, human interaction is too much. It's too intimate. And based off of previous experiences, it's really hard to to navigate that. And so by partnering with the horses, we are able to kind of break some of those barriers down and begin to build new pathways around relationships that then will transfer out of session and into the rest of the world.
Wow. I mean, that sounds awesome and inspiring too. You said you've been working with kids and initially, and some of them were coming to you, if not many of them were coming to you with these situations that you felt you really was above your pay grade in a sense, or a different pay grade rather. But that's it's one thing to say that, and it's another thing to say, all right, I'm going to go and I'm going to learn what puzzle piece I'm essentially missing here, right? So some people would have, and I'm not making a judgment, some people could have said, well, I can't help, this is not for me, right? Maybe they would direct them somewhere, but you did something else. You said, I need to find out and help these kids. Talk us through what that piece was for you. What was the thinking going on? What was the draw or the calling there?
Yeah, so I've always wanted to, or felt a call to help people, and recognizing my limitations. It was hard. It was actually after a bit of burnout that I experienced, because I was trying to fix things myself and take on a lot of responsibility that wasn't my own. And so it was my own personal journey too that kind of put me in this direction of let's look at the clinical aspect. And growing up, feeling like at some point in my life I would use horses to help people, and I thought that that would come during retirement. And but in seeking out some counsel from wise people, people said you should really explore getting your master's in counseling. And as I explored that, it just like I came alive. It was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And looking at my different giftings and just things that really stir me, counseling made sense. And then add in the fact that I can do counseling and horses together, it's a win-win for me.
That sounds amazing. When did this interest in horses come about?
I've had horses my entire life. I think we had our first ponies, official ponies, at age 3 or 4, and then at age 10 I got my first Michael's pony for my birthday, and then it's been in my
Game
blood ever
on.
since. Yep.
All right, so you get your degree. When did you found Gateway Family Services?
Yeah, we started in 2014, and so we're still very young, but we are providing services to about 100 families a month. And so there's a small team of us, and Central Illinois is very, we don't have a ton of resources for families. And so that we're a unique service anyway, but we're also one of few providers in the area. So we have quite a lengthy list of people, but we were part of a pilot program that to serve the Medicaid population at that point in 2014. And it just started growing and changing and morphing to meet the needs of our community. And in 2018 is when it really it took off. And we've been seeing growth ever since.
To me, that is awesome. I want people to hear this, that you just followed your gut, followed your passion, and you created this amazing resource. How did you go about starting this program?
Yeah. So the neat thing is my parents are horse people as well. And so while I was in my master's program, we were co-founding the Hooves of Hope, the mentoring program. So I was in Ohio and they were here, and I was helping them start that. And we had based this off of Crystal Peaks Youth Ranch out in Bend, Oregon. And
That's where I am.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. So
Huh.
you need to head out there. It's incredible. But so we kind of that it's just kind of stirred us, and we are like, hey, we should try something like this. And so we were doing the mentoring, and we were doing life skills and teaching kids. And I just, again, saw the need for a deep clinical work, and found natural lifemanship, the model of therapy we utilize, that's, deeply rooted in Dr. Perry's work. And so that's what kind of pushed me in that direction. So.
Man, that is awesome. I'm just, the trash truck is outside my house right now. So I was trying. All right. So who comes to Gateway Family Services?
Yeah, our clients range from age, I think 2.5 is our youngest that we've had here, all the way through the lifespan. Our oldest veteran was 88. when he was out here. So cover kids in the foster care system, domestic, international adoptions, um, just about anything.
And do they come for you because of trauma specifically, or solely rather?
Yeah, and a lot of it is some kids, the behavior is starting to show and surface, and so schools are referring kids, or families are recognizing, hey, something we need to work on something, and then they realize the trauma piece. They may not have recognized what the individual or what they had gone through was trauma,
Right.
and so they just seek out behavioral therapy and find us, and and a lot of kids have come to us because they've done traditional talk therapy and have not found all the success that they would want. And so they've
Mm-hmm.
sought out this as an addition, a new approach to therapy. And in our area, we have a high residential placement rate. And so we get a lot of kids who are kind of on that last step before they head to residential or JDC, just some high risk individuals. And so our approach I incorporate that multi-systemic, that wraparound approach with our kids and families to help, not just address the individual, but to
Right.
address the systems that they're in, because that inadvertently has reinforced some of these things that's led them to this place.
Yeah, of course. So walk us through how you work with these individuals. What does it look like?
Yeah, it's very unique, and caters to each client. So just for an example, I have a 5-year-old that's really rowdy and has lots of energy when he comes to session. Sometimes so much energy, it's difficult to get from the car to the barn. And so we've worked with Marty Smith, an amazing occupational therapist, and we've created a kind of a path that helps address their sensory needs to either up regulation or down regulation into the barn. So kiddo had that, and then comes to the board and he has his problem solving board that he gets to pick the different activities that he does for the day, and relationship with his horse. For an individual, that could look like we're doing some attachment work or detachment work on the ground, working on building a connection. Horses want to be in connection with us or with other horses, so we're able to work on addressing some of those relationship patterns. And so how can we build healthy patterns with our horse that then helps us build healthy patterns
Mhm.
with humans? Or that may look like we're riding, and so a relationship comes from that perspective. And so we're working from essentially the top down in that relationship. But with the riding, we're getting that passive sensory input. We're getting the diencephalon involved because of the
Mhm.
movement. There's an emotional connection because this is my horse, my friend that's carrying me. And then, we were able to then build those and strengthen those pathways in their brain.
Oh man, that's awesome. Now, are you, when you're doing this, and I realize it's different for each client or can be different for each client, are you naming what's going on? Do you need to name what's going on? I mean, I guess you don't, but how does that how do you monitor the growth or progress in a sense? What would that look like?
Yeah, it is really tricky, and it's really cool because a lot of times we don't have to talk about it. We're able
Right.
to help engage the brain in a way that helps them heal.
Right.
So what we look at is the symptoms that they came in with. We're monitoring, were they having 3 to 5 outbursts a day? And we're seeing that we've been able to, through the different interventions we've done, increase their window of tolerance. So maybe their outbursts are, we have one a week, or that's, so it's some of those typical clinical monitoring skills. But we're also looking at how does their relationship, not just with the horse, with anybody here, because
Mm.
we work in pairs, an equine professional and a mental health professional. So we're all about building that relationship. So we're seeing, are they connecting with us on a deeper level? Are they connecting with their horse on a deeper level? And horses are great because they provide excellent feedback for us. They're a
Hmm.
prey animal. So they want you to be consistent on and congruent on the inside and the outside. So if I come in and I'm trying to act like I'm tough and I'm not scared, but I really on the inside am scared, my horse is going to provide that feedback for me, and we can begin to work with that. This last week, a kid came. He has had a long history of um, inconsistent relationships and struggles with developing a deep, lasting connection with anybody, especially as caregivers. And he's connected with one of our horses, and he brought his toys to session and he lined them up along the fence because he wanted his friends to meet each other.
Oh
And it's just
man.
So we're looking at that, and that may not seem like a big success to a lot of people, but for me, that's huge for that kid because he was able in his own way to be able to say, I trust this horse enough
Mm,
to connect with my friends who are my toys. And so, and to, it was just a beautiful example of deep connection.
wow, that is awesome, man. In terms of, you said the horses provide feedback, pretty direct and maybe quick feedback. Can you share with us some how that what that feedback could look like sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, it can look as simple as a subtle ear twitch or their mouth gets tighter, and so that's where the equine professional comes into play because they're monitoring those little
Mm,
bits of feedback for us. And sometimes it's as obvious as a horse trying to bite or actually biting an
mhm,
individual. I mean, we've not had anybody get hurt, but the horses will, they take care of themselves, and so it is providing that feedback to the client of saying, "Hey, what you're doing doesn't feel good to me." And because they don't have those pathways associated with that, they're able to accept that feedback a lot better than as if I was to give them that feedback.
right, right. Now you mentioned you working in a systemic way, incorporating the families. How are you doing that?
So families might join us for a session. We're looking at what are the principles of pressure that can help, working on when a client ignores us, when they resist us, how do we respond to that? And I also think it's really important for them to see the connection between the horse and the kiddo and to be a part of that process. That also is after hour support and walking them through
Mhm,
when a client is struggling, that we're helping them regulate as well as they co-regulate with their kid. That's working with them to help schools with IEPs that are appropriate. That's working with community agencies to develop a close relationship for mentoring or making sure basic needs are met. So it's just looking at big picture for the client. So
wow,
it just depends on what each client needs.
right, right. You said from an early age, early on, you not only were interested in horses, but you wanted to help. And your journey has been really interesting and inspiring. And I'm curious, Michael, what help, how that definition has maybe changed or altered for you from the beginning, to where you are sitting now.
Whew. Yeah, it has been quite a journey of recognizing that. I think before I came at this thinking it I'm up front and you need to follow me. Come
Right.
on, let's go. We're gonna make our way to more of we're side by side and we're gonna journey this together. And it's not gonna be pretty, it may not be easy, but we're together versus me kind of pulling them along. And so
Right.
that's been the big change for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I was certainly like that myself too. Um, how about some kind of clinical errors,
Mm,
early clinical errors? If you want to share
yeah.
one or
Yeah, so one of my very first kiddos that I worked with the horses, I didn't understand the neurosequential process and was highly trained. I had a great education in cognitive behavioral therapy, and so I would come at him in those moments when he was starting to shut down and retreat into his brainstem, and really struggle. I was coming at him with lots and lots of cognitive questions and things to really try and engage the neocortex and not sure why it wasn't working. You know, I'm providing excellent clinical skills. This is what I
why
learned.
aren't they
But
listening to me?
exactly. But I was not recognizing, I had a kiddo that was in pure survival. And so at that point it was the here and now. And I was missing that.
Right.
And so for me, it's been really the clinical errors that I have learned the most from have been situations like that where I didn't slow down and recognize there was great clinical work to be done right there and just helping the kid regulate
Hmm.
and in that moment. So that would be my biggest thing of recognizing I was trying to speak to a part of the brain that was not online and getting frustrated that it wasn't working.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. All right. So let's talk about your conference coming up. Um, walk us through why you created this, how you created this, when it is. Just give us the full 9 yards here.
Well, Rising Tide came about after going to Banff to the Neurosequential Symposium with Dr. Perry. And I was out there and fired up and so excited about everything that I was learning. And as I was sitting there, I was like, how am I going to get this back to Central Illinois? And how are people going to get a hold of this? And so I just was like, why don't we bring the conference to us so that we can start to spread the message, and the people in our area are hearing this message that I'm hearing, that I'm loving and I'm just soaking up, that they're going to hear it from other people. And so for us, bringing people here means that more people get to hear it, which means more kids get to be um, touched by people who have been trauma, have a good trauma understanding, and that their understanding of trauma has transformed how they interact with individuals.
Mhm.
And so to me, that was the big driver in bringing it to Central Illinois.
When you say
And
it, you talking specifically about the neurosequential model, his work?
yes, Dr. Perry's work.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And for me, that has been so critical and so instrumental in my clinical journey, that I'm working with a school and I'm trying to explain to them what all the stuff that I've learned in a few minutes. And it's like, I think it would do not just the clients I'm serving now, clients that we see years down the road, that if we're bringing this in, that we can really do transform our community and really start to address. We're ranked 102 out of 102 counties in Illinois as the worst county.
Mm.
And so to me, bringing these leaders in who are radically, doing amazing things, hopefully this can change not just Gateway Family Services, but all the different agencies and the schools and the community leaders, that it can make a lasting impact. And so COVID kind of presented it threw us a curveball, because we were supposed to do this last October, and we had to do a virtual conference with Dr. Perry, and it was great. But as we did that, I realized, what if we're able to create this rising tide in other locations? And so we have 13 locations, co-host sites around the world, who are having a mini conference, or at the same
Wow.
conference, but connecting their community to this message. And so that instead of a ripple effect and having people fly into Central Illinois, because it's expensive to do all that, we'll find a co-host site that's near you. There's one in Oregon, in Grants Pass, and there's one in Australia. There's one in St. A in Milwaukee. They're all over the place. But our goal was that we're able to reach more people.
Mhm.
More people are able to hear this, and there's this beautiful networking and connection that takes place among professionals when you're at a conference, so that when we go to a meeting, we've heard the same language, we've heard the same thing, and we're going to make a difference. We're going to be unified, and we don't I think it will make a huge difference for the kids and families that we serve. um,
All right.
yeah.
All right. Hang on. So this is awesome. So first of all, when is the conference?
June 16th through 18th.
Okay. And it's live or
It
live
will.
and virtual?
Correct. So we have a mix of, some of our presenters are going to be live at different co-host sites, and you can access it from anywhere you want, completely online. You could access it at a co-host site, but some of the co-host sites will have a live presenter
Mhm.
who then broadcasts to the other co-host sites. But our hub, or the main location, is in Danville, Illinois. Our
No.
keynote speakers will be virtual, and then a lot of our breakout presenters will be live. And so we get to have the equine portion. So that is a little tricky to do virtually, but we're able to have that in person there in Danville. So
Who's going to be there? Who's going to be speaking at your event?
So Dr. Perry, Dr. Ablon, Brian and Gina Samuels, they'll all be virtual.
Okay.
And then the presenters that are live, Marty Smith, occupational therapist, Joshua Christian Oswald, he is out in DC working in health and family services as a foster advocate. I will be speaking. Tim and Bettina Job with Natural Lifemanship, and Shannon Knapp and Jake LaRue with Horse Sense of the Carolinas.
Dude, awesome. Really
Yeah.
awesome. I mean, first of all, congrats on having Bruce Perry speak. I mean, I can't think of someone that's been more inspiring to me than him. And he's been on this podcast a number of times, but awesome to have him and to do what you're doing. I mean, when I first started this podcast, I was listening to a lot of different podcasts, with entrepreneurs like yourself who are doing these incredible things. And I think what you're doing is incredible, to help people, to help kids who've been impacted by trauma, to found and create an organization like yourself, and then to create this conference. Dude, awesome. Seriously, this is what we need.
Thank you.
Really?
Yeah. And to me, I'm thinking, we're a small agency and I want my staff to be trained, but sometimes finances doesn't allow us to pay for a flight and hotel and things like that. And, my parents always said, you don't have to be the smartest person, surround yourself by smart people. And the amazing thing is if you look at the lineup of presenters, they are doing amazing things around the world and radically changing their communities. And so that's the part I feel like I'm giving a gift to people by sharing these presenters that will then hopefully, I've learned so much from them. I can't wait to have other people learn from them as well.
Well, that's kind of what I feel like I'm doing too. I'm certainly not the smartest person in the room, but I get to talk to people like you and share what you're doing with other people. So it's amazing. All right. As we wind down here, how can people learn about this conference?
They can go to risingtideconference.com and that will explain all of the details and where they can register and where their co-host, find a co-host site near them. The thing I will say is due to COVID restrictions, each site has a different number of attendees that can be present. So they'll want to monitor that and get tickets soon because we are filling up pretty quickly. But risingtideconference.com, if they use the trauma therapist, all caps, one word, as a discount, they're going to receive a discount on their tickets.
Nice.
So any listeners can do that. And but it will explain all the details. And we are just kind of one of those things that we're trying to look at this and find ways. We've sat in front of Zoom a lot this last year. And so we've tried to find creative ways to create a shared experience, sensory experience, so everybody can expect a cup of coffee from us. No matter if you're attending virtually or in person, we're all going to get to share the same cup of, not the same cup of coffee, but the same kind of coffee. So everybody's getting that as part of the registration. So just trying to look at this from a different perspective and
Right.
kind of be unique in our approach for it.
Right. And who's the conference for?
So this is for professionals, paraprofessionals. We've approached it from child and family, education, and then community. So from, if you're a foster parent, you can attend the stuff on child and family. If you're an educator, we've got a strong presentation group of educators, community from the NM Sports with Megan Bartlett to different residential facilities like Whole Services in Calgary or Cal Farley's Boys Ranch, looking at things in more restricted environments. So kind of looking at things from across the board as the lifespan. And so whatever population you're serving, you can kind of find some breakout presentations that fit your needs.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, Michael, as we wind down here, how about a book recommendation, whether trauma related or not, or equine therapy related or not?
Yes. So I would say the book that really kind of stirred me the most was The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog with Dr. Perry. But recently, a book that's really kind of helped me as far as with Rising Tide has been Atomic Habits by James Cleary, and talking, we rise and fall to the level of our systems versus our goals. And that has been a huge thing in helping clients too. They may have goals to stop this behavior, but if the systems aren't in place, we're going to continue to struggle. And so that's been a really cool book for me as well. I think I'm on the 4th time reading it.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So I'll have those listed here in the show notes at the traumatherapistpodcast.com. Michael, man, awesome talking to you. I'd love to have you back. It's really what this podcast is about. I mean, people reaching out, helping people who've been impacted by trauma and creating something that to me is so inspiring. So I appreciate you. Yeah. I appreciate you coming on here, man.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We'll be in touch.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right.